Egyptian militant, a former doctor called Ayman al-Zawahiri.
كانت هذه حقيقة 1987 محطة ثانية انتقالية للشيخ أسامة. التأثير الملحوظ للفكر المتشدد في تنظيم القاعدة بدأ من التصاق المصريين الذين كانوا وراء فكرة تأسيس التنظيم. المصريين كانوا هم وراء فكرة تأسيس تنظيم في سنة 1987. أقول تحديدا الأشخاص حول هذا، ليس طبعا أيمن الظواهري في ذلك الوقت بعيد تمام البعد عن الشيخ أسامة بن لادن، غير موجود، يعني غائب تماما. أما أنا من أقصد بتأسيس التنظيم إنما هو أبو عبيدة رحمه الله، الذي قتل أثناء عودته من كينيا إلى السودان في النهر لما انقلب فيهم الزورق. أبو عبيدة البنشيري كان يلقب هكذا نسبة لأنه أول جبهة زارها كانت جبهة بنشير عند أحمد شاه مسعود رحمهم الله. فأبو عبيدة البنشيري، أبو حفص المصري، وسيف العدل، هذه الشخصيات الثلاث البارزة.
Bin Laden was clearly the messenger. He was the one who was cast as the leader, the one who was pushed up front to do the talking. But looking back on that experience, and I've thought about it many times, I spent more time with Dr. Zawahiri than I did with Osama bin Laden. He wanted to know what type of questions would be asked. He wanted to know what areas would be covered. He wanted to know what program it would be on and for how long. He wanted to know what kind of shots we needed to go with the story. And clearly he had a lot to do with formulating the message. I think if there is a mindset behind bin Laden that helps formulate his message and his approach to delivering that message, it's probably Zawahiri.
In November 1988, Benazir Bhutto won elections in Pakistan and became the country's first female prime minister. The election was a blow to the Arabs in neighboring Afghanistan, who had lost an ally in Pakistan's previous ruler, General Zia al-Haq. Bhutto's Pakistan began to look with concern at the Arab fighters next door, particularly once Russian troops had fully withdrawn from Afghanistan by early 1989. Accusations continue to this day that bin Laden supported Pakistani politician Nawaz Sharif in a bid to topple the Bhutto government at that time. A former Pakistani intelligence official who knew bin Laden well told Al Jazeera that Sharif received financial support from bin Laden, among others.
One thing I tell you, today Mr. Nawaz Sharif refuses that he ever met Osama or he ever got any support from Osama. This is bad. He was a person who would always ask me, where is my benefactor? I would like to salute him. It was sometimes Osama's money, sometimes money came from outside, and the maximum money ultimately came from the governments. It came from government of Saudi Arabia, it came from government of UAE, it came from other governments also.
الذي أنا أعرف شخصيا أنه حدث بسبب أن هناك كان صديق مشترك لبن لادن ونواز شريف، وهو أحد الإخوة أخ خالد خواجة الذي قد اشتغل في السابق في جهاز الاستخبارات الباكستاني، وهو طبعا كان من الداعمين للجهاد الأفغاني ضد القوات السوفيتية، وأيضا كان بالاتصال الوثيق مع بن لادن. فحينما تعرض بعض المجاهدين العرب في بيشاور بعض المضايقات من الأجهزة الباكستانية في حكومة بينظير الأولى، فهو اقترح على بن لادن أن يدعم نواز شريف الذي كان زعيم المعارضة يعني في آنذاك لإسقاط حكومة بينظير بوتو.
When General Zia was killed, the Pakistani security agencies started arresting them. That was the problem, and Sheikh Osama bin Laden wanted to resolve this problem. He wanted some help, but nobody was ready to help him. Some people contacted him and they said that actually this is Benazir Bhutto's government which is creating problems, And if you want the solution of your problem, a new government can solve your problem. So you must support us. So Sheikh Usama bin Laden asked some Pakistani religious scholars, some ulama, to support Nawaz Sharif, and according to my information, Nawaz Sharif also met him.
Bin Laden left Afghanistan and the escalating civil war there following the Soviet withdrawal. He later emerged in Sudan after slipping out of Saudi Arabia. In Khartoum, leading Islamist ideologue Hassan Turabi had recently taken power and was offering protection to a variety of Islamic militant groups. Bin Laden contributed generously to the country that had announced its adherence to Sharia law. Among other things, he farmed and built a road as a goodwill gesture. His work won him many admirers among the Sudanese people.
احنا بنقول له الشيخ بن لادن، مسمينه الشيخ بن لادن. فكثير من الناس المنطقة هناك يعرفوا عرفة جيدة جدا بس الحلالة هناك ديل كانوا يعني يتمنوا الراجل ده يكون قاعد، لأنه كان بيبذل عليهم بذل شديد، بيحسن لهم إحسان الواحد لما يستغرب فيه. والله الراجل ده قروش أنا قلت بجيبه من وين؟ أي مسكين يجي يديه، والله مش مسكين تدي ال5 ويدي ال10، والله في واحد يديهم 50 جاء 1000 و20 و15. دي الطريقة أنا شفتها عنده بس. ده مع كل ما أعرفه عن الشيخ بن لادن.
Well, I have met him only twice, and both times in Sudan. He was lodged in Khartoum back in '93 December. Usama was building roads there. He was involved in agricultural activities. He was trying to economically build up Sudan, that is, and he had created certain structures also by way of infrastructure.
We went up through the desert north of Khartoum towards this little tiny village where bin Laden's men were building a new road which he'd constructed joining the village to the main highway between Khartoum and Port Sudan. And children were dancing and old men were explaining to him how grateful they were, and the village headman was thanking bin Laden. There bin Laden sat in his white robe and his red kufiya hat on. And I saw Jamal go up to him and greet him. And I saw bin Laden looking over Jamal's shoulder at me. He'd obviously was saying, I brought this Ajnabi with me. And bin Laden was I won't say he was shy, he was very nervous about meeting me. He'd not met a Western reporter before. And he clearly believed that I was going to ask him about terrorism. And in fact, what I was really interested to know from him was what it was like fighting the Russians.
While in Sudan, bin Laden remained politically active. For most of the 1990s, he maintained an office in London, named the Advisory and Reformation Committee. The office was believed to have been involved in distributing literature critical of the Saudi regime. Following bomb attacks in Riyadh and Khobar in Saudi Arabia, Sudan started to come under increasing pressure to expel its controversial guest. Investigators believed bin Laden was tied at some level to both attacks. Somalia was where bin Laden chose to open up his first front against the United States. In 1992, the Marines were sent there on a relief mission. Bin Laden provided arms and expertise to the Somalis. Soon after, American helicopters were shot down and Marines attacked and killed in the streets of Mogadishu. The Americans withdrew. Another superpower humiliated. Another bin Laden victory. The pressure on Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir to expel bin Laden intensified. As well as the Saudis and the Americans, the Egyptians added their voice. In 1995, an assassination attempt was made on Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Bin Laden and his Egyptian allies were suspected of being behind the attack. It was thought that bin Laden used his farm in Sudan as a training camp for Egyptian militants opposed to Mubarak. Perhaps to counter this allegation, bin Laden accepted an interview request from a Cairo-based American journalist, Scott McLeod. The interview took place at bin Laden's farm in Sudan.
Well, I met him 2 times altogether. It was part of the same interview, though. I went to Khartoum in Sudan in early February of 1996, and it was during the holy month of Ramadan. And I met bin Laden at his office in Khartoum. He had a construction company called, I think, Al Hijra Construction Company. And I met him in his office as the manager's office in that building.
Eventually, in 1996, Sudan succumbed to international pressure to expel bin Laden. In May of that year, bin Laden left. His land and investments in the country were appropriated by the government.
حكومة السودان أخذت أمواله وأخذت قريته وعقاراته، وأحيانا كان يكاتبها، كان يكاتب رئيس الجمهورية فيما سمعت، هذا سمع شهادة سمعية، وكانوا يرسلون إليه بعض وسائط الأمن الخفية إلى بورسودان ويتسللون ليؤدوا إليه شيئا زهيدا جدا لا يكاد تؤديه إلى صديق، يعني فضلا أن تؤديه إلى عشرات الملايين التي كانت دينا على ظهورهم. ولعلهم بعد ذلك شعروا بأنه هو الآن في همه وفي حصاره، فيمكن أن يبلعوا الأموال ويسكت عليها والعياذ بالله يعني.
فحتى لما عملت اللقاء مع الشيخ أسامة بن لادن انتقد الحكومة السودانية وهاجمها بشدة حقيقة، يعني وتحدث بمرارة عن أنهم كيف خذلوه وكيف خذلوا إنسان مسلم زيه وكيف أنه وثق فيهم، ويعني واعتقد أنهم بيقيموا دولة إسلامية حقيقية، وفي الآخر يعني طعنوه في الظهر.
Bin Laden still had friends in Afghanistan. At the time, in 1996, the country was under the presidency of Burhanuddin Rabbani. Allies of the Afghan president recognized that bin Laden was in need of a new sanctuary.
كما سمعت أنه لم يكن بالتفصيل كيف رجع، ولكن عن طريق بعض الإخوة الذين كانوا في الحزب الإسلامي لمولى محمد يونس خالص كانوا على صلة بهم، وفي إحدى الأسفار الذين وفد منهم سافروا إلى السودان في زيارة، والتقوا هناك ببعض الأشخاص منهم اسامه بن لادن.
پدې کې مثلا پدې کې هغه شهیدانو نوم اخلم، د کسانو چې ژوندۍ دي هغه نوم نه اخلم ځکه چې ورته مشکل پیښ نشي. پدې کې یو مجاهد صاحب و چې د حزب اسلامي حکمتیار قومندان و، د انجینر محمود د استاد سیاف قومندان و، د مولوی صاحب خالص قومندان و، سازنور د استاد سیاف قومندان و، او ځینې نور کسان چې هغوی اوس ژوندي دي، دا کسان ټول لاړل سودان ته. په دې وخت کې داسې معلومېده چې د سودان دولت تر زیاتېدونکي فشار لاندې چې باید اسامه له خپل خاورې نه وشړي یا دا چې د امریکایانو ته تسلیم کړي. نو دوی چې لاړل هلته او اسامه سره ولیدل، اسامه ته دا بلنه ورکړه چې تاسو راشئ افغانستان ته.